Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Furlong, and today we're talking about energy and ATPs. I'm sure we've all had those mornings where we get up and we're so tired and the last thing you're thinking about is trying to get to biology class. And you feel like, I just don't have any energy. Well, that's what we're talking about today, is that energy that your body needs in order to function properly. There's a lot of things going on inside this cell, as we can see in this video, and all of those things going on requires energy. See, cells need energy in order to stay alive. Now, they need energy for a variety of things. One is to prevent entropy. Entropy is simply a fancy way of saying that things want to get from a state of order to a state of disorder, kind of like your bedroom. Right? In order to prevent that from happening, however, though, we need to have energy. Also, energy is needed for chemical reactions to occur. All of those things that are taking place inside of your cells, many of them need a chemical reaction in order for that to happen. And in order for those chemical reactions to take place, you have to have energy. We already know that glucose is a source of energy. The problem is the energy that's in a glucose molecule is way too much for a cell to handle. For instance, here we see a glucose molecule just drop out of nowhere. And if we were to release all of the energy that's in that glucose once inside the cell, it'd be like a little bomb going off. Instead, we're going to take that glucose molecule and we're going to divide that energy up into 36 ATP molecules. These are the molecules that you see popping up. Now, I don't have 36 of them, but you get the idea that there's quite a few. The energy that's in that glucose molecule will be distributed to those 36 ATP. So you can see now they have all this energy, but just a little tiny bit in order to allow for reactions to take place. And when they release their energy inside the cell, and it gives off energy for these chemical reactions to take place, you can see the cell is still there. Let's take a closer look at the ATP molecule. ATP is an acronym. It stands for adenosine triphosphate. So let's break this down. There is an adenine molecule. So this is adenine. Sort of looks like a sideways snowman to me. It is bonded to a ribose sugar. So this is a 5-carbon sugar. Together, it makes up the molecule called adenosine, which is the adenine and the ribose. Now, attached to the ribose, you can see that there are 3 phosphate groups. Right? But notice, if you look real closely at those 3 phosphate groups, it doesn't have a straight line, which represents a type of a bond. It has a wavy line. Those are high energy bonds. So this is where the energy is being stored in an ATP molecule. Not in the ribose, not in the sugar where you maybe think that that energy should be stored. It's in these bonds. So when we want to use that energy, we have to break those bonds. This is what's known as the ATP cycle. So here is our molecule of ATP. When we need that energy, an enzyme comes along and it breaks that 3rd phosphate off of the ATP molecule. Now this releases just enough energy to allow for that reaction to take place. The thing is, we don't have ATP anymore. We have a molecule that's called ADP, or adenosine diphosphate. Notice there's only 2 phosphate groups there. Di means 2, tri means 3. So how do we get ATP back? Well, the nice thing is ATP and ADP are reusable. So we got to get some energy. Of course, you guessed it, that energy is coming from glucose. So that energy is coming in from glucose. That adds the phosphate back on. And now we have ATP again. Now this process is happening again and again and again. So if we were to diagram this out, here we have an ATP molecule. It's going to form, I'll jot this down up here, so we have ATP. We need to release a phosphate group, and of course there's going to be an enzyme that does that, and it's going to release a small amount of energy. Right. But now we have ADP or adenosine diphosphate. Inside of our cells, we can regenerate that back into ATP, but we have to add two things. Of course, one of those is going to be another phosphate group, and of course we need a little bit of energy. And as we already shown before, that's going to come from a molecule, say glucose. So where do we get all of our energy from? It depends on the type of organism you are. If you're a heterotroph like we are, well, we get our energy from the food that we eat. We get that by consuming other organisms. But not all organisms have to do this. There's a whole group of organisms called autotrophs. Now the word auto means self, troph means to feed. Right? So they can feed themselves, or they're kind of like plants. They can carry out the process of photosynthesis, and they can make their own glucose molecules. We'll talk more about that in another video. Ultimately, all of this energy that we're using comes from the sun. Now it comes in the form of light energy. We can't use light energy as is, but we have autotrophs that can. So for instance, this tree can take light energy. It's going to take carbon dioxide from the air. It's going to take water, and in this case, because this particular plant has roots, it's going to absorb it through its roots, and it's going to get into the leaves. When photosynthesis takes place, the plants can take that carbon dioxide and water along with that light energy and make a carbohydrate like glucose, C6H12O6. See if I can draw a carbohydrate here. All right. It's also going to give off as a byproduct some oxygen gas. Now it just so happens that those are the two things that's needed by a heterotroph, kind of like our class mascot here, in order for them to get that energy, which is now in the glucose molecule. They're going to release that energy. That's going to keep the organism alive. Now, some of that energy is going to be given off in the form of heat. But in this process, known as cell respiration, organisms are going to release carbon dioxide and water, which just so happens to be the two things that photosynthesis needs. So now we can see this flow of energy. The energy that we're using, we can trace it back all the way to the sun. Intermediately, it came from an ATP that got its energy from a glucose molecule that was made by an autotroph, but ultimately that energy came from the sun. So we're going to talk more about this in class, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Bye.